I actually.
Shane.
Huh? I don't actually.
That's just like.
Oh. Did that make you in charge? And
Those are the right prescription.
Councilman Bobble.
I think they're either 1.5
For the
or
lunch.
not strong enough.
I'll see if I can.
Not strong enough. Okay, just do like this. That's, you're kind of whiny.
That's not scary.
It's my backup here. What else do you? Go ahead, Mr. Martin. I know.
All right, good morning, everyone. It is 10:44. We're now back. We're reconvened from executive session. As a result, no action was taken in executive session. We're now moved. I understand we have public speakers, but also what you'll hear, we both, well, pretty much all of us, have received a number of issues, or say calls, text messages, and emails regarding election pay. I want to address that right now, but we also have public speakers, and I do want to offer y'all an opportunity to speak on as it relates to whatever issue you may be having. But one of the things that we're doing to address the issue of the debacle, I would say, as it relates to election workers' pay, is that we're working to outsource that so that that's not an issue going forward for the November election. Right now, would you all rather that we hear from the public speakers, or do you want to have Mr. Scarpello do his presentation, and then we hear from public speakers?
Mr. Warren, if you don't mind, I'd like to invite County Administrator Gordon Heichel to speak briefly about the process that is going to be put in place
As it relates to
as it relates
election
to the pay.
Okay, Mr.
So,
Heichel.
Mr. Heichel,
I just put him here, or
wherever you're comfortable, sir, and the audience can hear you.
let me talk real loud. Hi, folks, good morning. My name is Gordon Heichel. I'm the Assistant County Administrator for Dallas County. And we have heard on behalf of the Commissioners Court, the Election Commission, we've heard your complaints about paychecks and other issues. And I tell you this, as a county employee, if I don't get my paycheck every 2 weeks, I get nervous, I get real angry. I can't imagine how it has made you feel, either not knowing when you'll get paid or getting paid and not knowing if you can cash the check. We've heard that complaint. For that, in preparation for November, we're going to take a twofold approach. One is we have asked the purchasing department to put together what's called a request for a proposal as to if we were to outsource the payroll function just to this department. We're working with that department, put it together, to understand the whole process from the time you start getting your training, whether you work election day or early voting, how you get your timesheets from where you work to us, so you can get your check timely and at a definitive time. If you work on this day, we want you to know you'll be paid by this date. We're working on that process. Secondly, our election vendor, ES&S, they work with Mr. Scarpello, put together an electronic process that we're also going to be working with our IT department and the auditor's office to make sure that that application can interface with the payroll department, IT department can work it, so that electronically, we can capture the hours that you have worked, so that you can be paid timely. So between now and November, we'll be doing a twofold track, working with the ES&S application, and also an RFP to see if we can outsource this, because trust me, we've heard the frustration, rightfully so. We've heard the angst, rightfully so. And we want to address the problem because we need you to make this whole process work. Okay? So that's a commitment that we're making to you on behalf of the Commissioners Court and folks in the Election Commission to try to address this payroll issue. Okay? Any questions or? Okay, thank you, Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Heichel. Okay. All right, Mr. Ames is getting his clock prepared to do the timer for public speakers. We'll start with Angela Roberson.
Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes each to speak.
My name is Angela Robertson. My address is 10111 Ivy Gate Circle in Dallas, Texas. I'm election day judge at Aldelia Library, where it's common for us to have 100 voters per hour. As elections administrator, Michael Scarpello has done a good job. His performance has been way better than his predecessor. We now have a flow chart for handling uncommon situations at voting centers. We have new checklists for opening and closing each machine at the voting center. Paperwork makes more sense, and he replies to serious inquiries from judges. He has made significant improvements in the short time he has served Dallas County. It is best for him to stay in his current post.
Thank you. Next, we have Robert Burns.
Hello, my name's Robert Burns. I live at 4127 Calculus Drive in Dallas, Texas. And I'm here to say as a voter, and I normally early vote, and I voted on election day in all this group of elections we've just gone through, and it was so seamless, no problems, everything was great. Now, as an election clerk, this was my first year of being an election clerk. And what I observed were the judges, I worked with 2 judges, they were so organized, they had handbooks that defined everything. And most importantly, both days we had problems, but the problems were resolved. The judges knew who to call. They called, people showed up. In one case, the sheriff showed up with the person, and these things were resolved very quickly. And I appreciate how you've organized this, and I hope that you continue to be here and make things better as we progress. Thank you.
Next, we have Beth Bissell, if I'm saying your name correctly.
No, but nobody else does second.
Bicel?
It's okay. Keep trying. Beasel, Beth Beasel,
Beasel,
3608 Southwestern Boulevard. But I do want to start first to say I'm happy with the paycheck situation. I got 3 paychecks, 2 in my name and 1 in somebody else's name to my house. And my husband got 2 paychecks, so we're good. Okay, just
You didn't
kidding.
keep
Just
that.
kidding. Okay. I'm here to testify in support of Mr. Scarpello, even though we've never met. And I hope one day we can meet on a more personal basis. So why am I here to speak in favor of Mr. Scarpello? Well, you see, I'm his customer. I'm an election judge and have been for the past 10 or so years. When he came on board, I saw a night and day difference. He has made my job as an election judge easier and better. The changes he's implemented have brought a new level of efficiency and simplicity. Now, I'm not saying I love lugging around that heavy equipment. I don't. And I'd like to get rid of it, but I do love his handbook because that's real easy to carry around. But playing the hand we're dealt, Mr. Scarpello has made my election work better, all around better. More improvements probably need to be made, and I have confidence that Mr. Scarpello is willing to work with us to make the improvements that we'd like to make. Most importantly, something that I hope that we can all agree on is this. We all want honest and fair elections with verifiable and certifiable and auditable results, where the voters and the workers can have confidence in the outcome. This has not always been the case. If given the chance, without undue external pressure, I believe, I know Mr. Scarpello will do the right thing. I wholeheartedly support giving Mr. Scarpello the chance. Thank you.
Ellen Thielen, so if I'm messing up your name, I apologize. Okay.
Ellen Thielen, 12935 Epsfield Road, Farmers Branch, Texas. I have never met Mr. Scarpello. I have never actually talked to him, but I am an employee of Dallas County Elections. I work on the ballot board. And the reason I knew who he was is because he comes in fairly regularly to talk to my supervisors to find out, I guess, how we can make things better. And so I asked him, I said, is that the man? He said, yes, it is. So I have seen such a dramatic change in the way that I'm on signature verification and ballot board, and I actually cure ballots. And I have just seen such a tremendous change in efficiency and simplicity in the way that we do our job. We used to have to count these boxes of ballots. We'd have to count them just time and time again till we agreed. Now that's all simplified. We're not lugging around these boxes time and again. He is totally, and I just assume this is leadership because it wasn't that way a couple of years ago when I worked the 2020 election, and now it's so much better. And we kind of have a saying, me and my partner, well, let's not get too used to this way because it's going to change the next election, but it's always better. So I just want to thank Mr. Scarpello for making our job easier and better. And I just feel more confident now that things are progressing the way that they're supposed to. And I want to say one other thing, which is probably silly to everybody else, but I've worked here for several years, and I never had a badge. I mean, a lot of people did, but me and a lot of my cohorts never had a badge that we could even get in to where we worked. We had to knock, wait for one of our colleagues to open the door, and then we finally get in. But since this past year, as soon as I came back to work for this round of elections, we were shuffled off downtown, and I immediately got a badge. So I can get in now where I work. So anyway, I just thank you for everything that you've done.
Next, we have Mike Slayton.
Hello, I'm Mike Slayton, 305 Brookwood Forest, Sunnyvale, Texas. I've worked in a little bit different. I've been in Central Count as a poll watcher since 2017. In the last year and a half, I have worked as the alternate judge and then the judge for the primary election, March 1. So I've worked very closely with the Mr. Scarpello and the elections department. Under Michael's leadership, I see more transparency. I see more cooperation and communication. He has put forth a push for unity between the parties. He's made an effort to comply with Texas election code law and the changes made by Senate Bill 1. He's done this without the support of some and cooperation of some of the employees in the elections department and in Central Count. And I would be more specific about even in Central Count. As the alternate judge and as the election judge, I kind of have a unique relationship with Mr. Scarpello. And I found him to be very professional, open, courteous, respectful when we disagree. And we did disagree on some things. And we worked it out to an agreeable solution, complying with the Texas election code law. He was open-minded. He listens. he's fair. That's not always been the case in the past. And that's all I'll say about the past in the elections department here in Dallas County. We're in an important time. All elections are important. And change leads to chaos. Chaos leads to voter lack of comfort, a lack of voter support, a lack of voter feeling like their vote is being counted. It also affects the candidates. So that's the last thing we need. You've heard from others about the good things that have been done by Mr. Scarpello. So in conclusion, I would say there's been many positive, constructive, and complying with the Texas election call changes that were been made under Mr. Scarpello as our elections administrator. This last runoff election that we just had may have been the most smoothest election of all. And I'm speaking of the last one that we had with everything the way it felt. So I certainly recommend Mr. Scarpello.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Benton Jones.
I had something prepared, but I think I'm gonna go a little bit off the cuff, but within my 3 minutes.
Mr. Jones, name and address.
I'll got you. My name is Benton Jones. Address is 707 Vermont Avenue, Dallas, Texas. And I have 3 hats today. I am a candidate on the ballot right now. I've also been an election judge and also a precinct chair. So when we talk about the issues that are happening with the elections process, I hear there are a lot of people, good or bad, that have a lot of this pointing to Mr. Scarpello, who I've never met. But the issue that I want to talk about is within the southern sector of Dallas that continues to have issues when it comes to managing elections. Whether we talk about the education that's needed when polling locations are closing, or to educate voters about the polling location, whether we talk about the staffing and the technical support that is needed at elections locations, because oftentimes even I have experience as an election judge coming and running an election that I could not open my center for at least 2 hours because of technical issues, and the person sent there could not provide the technical assistance needed to move the process forward. And then process, when comments and issues were given, not being able to get a phone call back from a person to be able to receive help. So I say this in a time frame between 2019 to right now. I'm not here to point fingers. What I am here to address is an issue. And the issue is we have huge challenges that need to be addressed within the southern sector of Dallas when it comes to running votes. And what I want to make sure is that between this time, about 4 months before our next elections, we make a solid plan that involves the community and also the people that work these elections to be part of the solutions. I oftentimes do not see that, and I am respectfully requesting that to happen so that we can continue to have the elections that we need and have the voices of our voters heard, and we can make sure that we have a process that we put together the best practices that we can use to run future elections. So if that's Mr. Scarpello, I'm asking you, the southern sector of Dallas needs help. I'm not making a generalization about, oh, the elections are just great or, oh, the elections are terrible. But as someone who's ran elections in the southern sector of Dallas, there are problems. They need to be addressed. And I'm asking you to do that as our elections administrator. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Ms. Carla Reynolds Grogan.
Carla Reynolds Grogan, 6845 Antler Avenue, Dallas. First, let me thank Commissioner Price and Daphne Fain, District 3, for their continued support and assistance with the law as it refers to Texas law in getting things taken care of for us. Now, it's not directed toward Mr. Scarpello, but it has happened since he's been here. It wasn't broke before he came, but once he came, we saw so many discrepancies and so many things happen. These wonderful people behind me have spoke, yeah, what part of town are you in? And how do you get so eager to get his number and talk to him personally? We don't get that privilege. I can call his number 10 times a day and he never answers me. So why is it that it's a certain type of people that you talk to or you return phone calls to, as well as our equipment is broken down, tore up, and I have to call Commissioner Price's office to say, hey, can you get me somebody? That's who works for me. The elections department, all they say is, okay, we're working on it, we're getting it, but the minute I make a phone call to that office, it gets done within the hour. That shouldn't happen that way. This is the elections department. Why can't they get it done? Now, I mean, like I said, this flow chart thing that she loves so greatly, it's a joke. It's a joke. I looked at that thing backwards. I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I wrote flow charts for years. That's a joke. We never needed a flow chart before, and we don't need one now. I can do this with my eyes closed. I've been a judge for well into 10 years as well, and I've worked for Dallas County for over 20. Some of this stuff is redundant and ridiculous. And these checklists, we as judges spend more time checking off little boxes. Oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did that. We know what to do. I can walk in a vote center and tell my people, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of that, and by 15 minutes, it's done. But then I gotta sit down and spend 45 minutes checking off little boxes. For what? What does that say? We've been doing this long enough that we already know what we're doing. I am so sorry that he felt like those were things that we needed, but we didn't. They didn't come to us and say, what is it? What's wrong? What can we do to help? They just put together a flow chart. They put together some checklists. They didn't talk to any of us. We got left in the dark, and then we got handed these books. And then we got handed these people that they're supposed to be co-judges. They have not been trained. I was told to shadow you. I don't need nobody to shadow me. For what? Shadow me and do what? Then they don't implement anything. They don't do anything. They sit around, they go to sleep, they go to lunch for an hour, they go home, they come late, they go home early. I'm sorry, that the Southern sector doesn't need that. District 3 bust their butt for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grogan. Next, we have Diane Jackson.
Good morning. I am Diana Jackson. My address is 548 Missionary Ridge, DeSoto, Texas. First of all, I am quite impressed that Mr. Carpello has time to visit one section of the town of Dallas versus the other. I am quite impressed that they are getting the support that they need. That wasn't in my notes from the beginning, but to hear all of the accolades coming from the north side of town, I am so impressed. So if you could just do a fourth of that for us on the south side, I would have a different opinion about your performance. First of all, I want to talk about my manpower and personnel. My staffing continues to be quite short because I'm the one that's in the field. I am the one that is working with my voters. So when you send me an adequate number of personnel, it is hard for me to service my voters. And that is so important to me. And it's not until it becomes important to everyone that we can make sure that mission is accomplished. So I still continue to complain, beg for personnel. Because Mr. Carpello never comes to my location and sit and watch my clientele at my location. The average age group at my location ranges from 65 to 95 plus as far as their ages. Therefore, those individuals has to have one-on-one assistance. From the time you open the door, you walk them to the check-in, you walk from the check-in to the express voter. You literally have to insert their ballots. You have to read their ballots. You have to bring a chair for them to be seated. They can't even stand to vote. And then you have to take them over to the tabulator. You have to insert the ballot. You have to make sure they get out the door. But yet and still, you don't understand the importance of what I need to staff my area. I wonder how he's able to perform at his location if he doesn't have enough staff. But I know he goes and hire incompetent temps to do the job that still cannot be completed. So that's where I'm having a problem with my training. With this delivery and pickup, I continue as a judge to haul equipment, not pick up, but haul. I have to haul EPO books, I have to haul paperwork, I have to haul. The list is so long, and I'm sure you all are aware. Whereas my co-judge carries a USB drive to a location that we both go to. No one has ever said, won't you all divide some of your equipment? I don't even have room in my equipment. I have to borrow transportation to haul equipment to the Dallas County election site. I think that's very unfair, but you want to give me a co-judge. We line up with titles, but we don't line up with roles and responsibility. I think that's very unfair. And I know that anybody that has been in any role where you get paid and you have a title, you expect your co-partner to be at the same level that you are. You want me to
I'm
train.
sorry, you're out of time. Can you just finish up that thought?
Okay, I'll go ahead and finish it up. What it is, you didn't announce the 3 minutes until we got started. So had I known prior to that, I would have narrowed it down.
It's
But I-
always 3 minutes. Okay.
I'll do that. So we can move on to the inclement weather. I don't know if you all know that the equipment has to be taken out when we have curbside. There is nothing in place, no plan. How do you wrap up the equipment? So we just haul that outside also. Delaying the payroll, and I'll stop with that because I see that you all try to be proactive and come up with an answer for payroll. But it is just unacceptable for a government entity to give us a post-dated check and the embarrassment of going to the bank for the bank teller to tell you that it's a post-dated check. So I'll stop at that. I'll put the rest of it to you in writing.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am. I appreciate it. Next, we have Wes Bowen.
Yes, my name is Wes Bowen. I'm at 9427 Windy Knoll Drive, Dallas, Texas, 75243. So I'd like to thank the Election Commission for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I rise in appreciation as a taxpayer in Dallas County for Mr. Scarpello's hard work, his professionalism, and his willingness to make improvements to processes that make it easier for voters and for election workers in Dallas County while maintaining the goal of compliance with the Texas Election Code. Also appreciate the parties or Mr. Scarpello's responsiveness to the party in inquiries related to my volunteer work that I do for advocacy in the area of election integrity. While we may not always agree on issues, Mr. Scarpello is always willing to and able to articulate the position of the election department in a way that I think should prevent costly litigation going forward, all while dealing with what seems like a massive amount of information requests that are coming through his office. And while I realize that new initiatives and sometimes cause growing pains with an existing staff, I think Mr. Scarpello has experienced unprecedented hiring shortages and a lack of election workers responding to their prior commitments but in face of all that, he's continued to administer elections and actually generate performance measurements that have not previously been available in Dallas County. And so using these metrics, I feel like the county can apply the resources in a way that will make sure that taxpayer dollars are used more effectively going forward. And I would just say with so much partisan political distrust in our country, I would actually say we need more election administrators like Mr. Scarpello. And under his leadership and with our prayers, I think that Dallas County could actually become a model for how elections are administered in this country. And listen, I get it. One side or the other is always going to be disappointed in election results. But at the end of the day, we need to have faith and confidence that we have reliable election returns. And so I want to thank Mr. Scarpello for his hard work over the last couple of years. And I should just ask everyone to join me in supporting his ability to continue to administer effective, reliable elections in Dallas County. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Susan Fountain.
My name is Susan Fountain. I live in Dallas, Texas at 10630 Chesterton, and I have served in a number of capacities, but when we implemented in 2018 a countywide system of voting and tried to open 469 separate voting locations at that time, it not only changed the entire process, but the madness of trying to staff 469 voting locations with a judge and workers, and get equipment sent to each location to have some of these locations within 2 or 3 blocks of each other. And we had combined them before, to have some of these voting centers return the ballots. And I have been in Central Count when I opened a blue box with 1 ballot in it. That is not a good stewardship of my tax dollars nor yours. And I applaud our elections administrator, Mr. Scarpello, for at least trying to get some of those very low turnout election locations closed in order to save my tax dollars, as well as the leadership of both county parties. And I think he's doing a great job, and hope he will just continue to make things better in Dallas County all around. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Ms. Deborah Spitzer.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Spitzer. I live at 4814 Fremont Street in East Dallas. I am a relative. This is my first time being a county judge, and I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I started working elections in 2016. I worked as a clerk for several elections, and now this was my first opportunity being a judge. In talking about training, the training has just vastly improved since I first started as a clerk. I was brought into this room, and the training, the instructors were very nice. They were trying their best, but they were begging people brand new like me who didn't even know where the front door was to be a judge. And that frightened me. I thought, what am I getting myself into? Well, the judge that I did have during my first election was very competent and mentored me through, and everything went fine. Now myself as a judge, I find that the training has vastly improved. No longer are there still is a shortage of employees and staff, but it is greatly, greatly improved. And as a judge, this is the first time, I did have a problem, and my co-judge had to step out for a few minutes. I had a problem with the tabulator, with something I'd never really ever had to deal with before. And I went to the books that some of the people are saying are great and some are criticizing, and it answered my problem immediately, so that I was able to, when I had a room full of voters, and it slowed down a little bit, but the problem was solved immediately. So I thank you, and I thank the election committee.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Ms. Sandra Biggs.
Hello. Sandra Biggs, 4520 Swiss Avenue, Dallas. I have just a few points. Our book is good and bad. There are technical things that if you're not a judge, I've been a judge since 1984, so I don't really need to check off. I have somebody do that for me. We just come in and do everything. That's great for a brand new judge. So, I have no problem with it. If you're new, you think it's great. If you're an old judge, you think, hey, what do I need this for? But, okay, so I have some points. I have had a hard time getting into the library. I am the judge on early election at Ardelia Library. I've had to open the library 4 times. I've had to come call everybody. I've gotten to the point where I have everyone's phone numbers in security and everyone's phone number at the library. And usually security is not there on time. It's a problem. I've called in and I've reported it. Still happens. That's one problem. Maybe we can get that taken care of. I've had adequate number of clerks each time. I know who I need and what I need. We are like that. We are a team. We get our people through 1 minute. Takes us 1 minute to get a person in and out. Older people, we have somebody go with them, just like the lady said, and help them and get them through without any problem. I have a adequate number of clerks on this last election, which was nonpartisan. I had my clerks ready, and I was assigned 2 clerks from the opposite, that just one lady showed up on election day and said she was there to work, and I said I didn't need her. She called in and they told her to stay there, so I paid 2 extra clerks for no reason. There was no reason for, on a nonpartisan basis for those 2 clerks to be there. That's a problem, and I think it needs to be taken care of. The last partisan election, like I said, it was very smooth. We do some of the most, we're one of the biggest voting centers. We have the most people come through, so we're like a polished team. We do everything. So all I need is the people that I know are good. My co-judge really doesn't know much of anything. I'm trying to help her learn. She's a lovely lady, but she really just sits on her phone and does Facebook all day. And I've asked her not to, but that doesn't work. And it's just something that I don't have any power over. This is something that really it worries me. In March, there was an incident at my poll with a poll watcher. He tried to get into the 200 with the opposite judge. When I saw this, I stopped that. I reported it immediately to Mr. Scarpello, to all the people that needed to know, to Commissioner Price, to Commissioner Daniels, and I hope they had sent this around for everybody else to know and to understand. The person came back the next day. There was another poll watcher with me. He began by reading me some kind of document that I had broken the law. When I said, no, you've been given every opportunity to do things except look at the ballots, which I said no. And he left. Then he came back and started trouble. And while he was there with me, with this other poll watcher right next to me, he insulted me. He treated me like I was some kind of, I wasn't a judge. I was just there for him to spew things at me. And she was insulted, and she followed him out, and she told him that this was the worst thing that ever happened. This man is on site. I watched some people take pictures of my license plate 2 times, 2 drop-offs. There's somebody taking pictures of our license plates. Why is this happening? There's no reason for people to take pictures of our license plates when we drop off our supplies. This second time I saw a person do it, I got out.
Please.
Okay, I will do that. This person was the same person who we had to call the police on. This person was right there on, and if I had not gotten out of I watched him and I took a picture of him, and then he was taking my license plates down, and when he saw me, and I took another picture of him trying to get a better picture.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
He
time
hit
is
me.
up.
He hid his face from me. I want to know why he's there, and I want him to disappear, and I want to know why those people are taking our pictures
Thank you.
of our license plates. Thank you.
I have a Diana, but no last name. The handwriting is different than Miss Diana Jackson. I'm not sure if there's another Diana here. Okay, guess not. Next we have Martin Burrell.
Thank you very much. I didn't know that this was a meeting to praise up, vilify the administrator.
Name and address, please, sir.
Perhaps,
Name and address, please.
this is, I'm Martin Burrell in 2690 DeVille Circle,
Thank you.
Dallas, Texas, Oak Cliff, Texas. Again, I wasn't sure whether this was a meeting to praise or vilify the new administrator. My intent was to come to talk a little bit about the fact that I've been an election judge for more than 30 years. And we have worked with Ms. Pippin Poole and many others. And so, like she indicated, when the speakers indicated earlier, it wasn't broken before, just needed some modifications. And so some of those adjustments have been made and some have not. One of the things that, we have consistently said is that the importance of running an election has to do with the people who are responsible for administering the election. And what we've determined, payroll has never been a concern of mine, because when we started, we were getting, I don't even know what we were being paid, whether it was $3 or $6 a day, I don't know what it was. Because we were doing it for a different reason. And that reason was to ensure that African Americans and other marginalized people who were intimidated and prevented from voting properly were allowed the opportunity to be able to come on election day and express themselves in an open manner. And what we've determined is that with Senate Bill 1, some of the intimidation that people were feeling or believed that somehow this message was that somehow things need to be changed. But I think part of what we want to say is that the consistency is what is needed in the election process. Consistency in signage. One of the things that we have said consistently over the years is that if you're going to put up signage, let it all be consistent in every place. I've been writing informational letters saying, create a signboard with all of the signage on it so that we can set it in place. And when you go into every precinct, it would look the same. Payroll processing, simplify that process. People being paid with Zelle and Cash App. I mean, it's a simple process. Just pay the people. I've got a clerk who worked with me, a student clerk who worked with me on March 1st, who still haven't received a paycheck. But I'm not concerned about it because it's a voluntary effort for me. But I still think it should be consistency in the way we pay and the pay process. It should be consistency in the election day personnel. That when you identify individuals who are going to work the election, they need to be working it not for the money, but because they're committed to the process. It is up to judges to recruit people to work with them who are committed to the process. And I have worked with some of the same people for the last 30 years who are committed to the process. They're not interested in pay. They're interested in process and making sure that voters have the opportunity to participate effectively without being intimidated. We're not going to be intimidated. And so we think that part of this process needs to be something where we begin to turn the election process into something real, that it is significant and that we must protect it at all costs. And again, the process wasn't broken under Ms. Pippin Poole. What we think is that there are some suggested changes that need to be made, and it should be, one last thing, the training process. For many of us who have done this consistently over and over and over, there should be two types of training. One for new people and one to refresh us on any new things that have changed. We should not be stuck in here with people who ask these crazy questions, who have never done this before. And I think that would be something that needs to be changed.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burrell. I would also extend this opportunity to speak to any members of the Election Commission who may want to express a point of view, if you so choose to.
Mr. Warren, I'd just like to say I thank you all for coming today to the commission. This commission cannot work with the elections department to improve the process without your feedback. I thank each one of you who are a part of the process, whether you be a poll worker, an election judge. We cannot hold elections without you. And so your participation is crucial. And I agree that the process is important, and it's not about the money for several of you. But many of our workers, it is about the money, and they need to be paid properly. And we have heard the complaints about the pay situation. And Dallas County is in the process of implementing a stopgap procedure to get an outsourced vendor to help with that pay process. I share your concerns with communication. when it comes to the elections department and when it comes to communicating with our election judges on a regular basis about their needs and their concerns. And I know that the elections department has heard you today, and I certainly hope and encourage them to put effort into going out and seeing the concerns that you have heard today, Mr. Scarpello, and seeing if you can address those concerns expediently to make sure that the November election is as successful as it can be. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you guys for what you do every single day when it comes to elections process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. I would just like to add, I really do appreciate the work that our election judges, our election workers do, because we cannot conduct elections, fair elections, without your assistance. Being an elected official whose name appears on the ballot is very important to me, that elections are fair. I'm not one who favors leaning towards one side or another. I believe in fair elections. I wouldn't want to win an election unless it was with integrity. I'm disheartened by some of the things that I've heard today, as it relates to election pay for some of the workers. We are addressing that. I find it very troubling that I had to communicate with the woman who, Mr. Burrell, you mentioned it's about a process. But for some people, this is money that they desperately need. I spoke with the woman who had spent $9,000 to have her AC unit replaced, and given that we're already in triple-digit temperatures, and of course she needed some money, so that has an impact. While it may not impact you, while it may not impact me, not everyone is in the same position that we're in. We have to have a heart of care for those individuals who are not in the same position that we're in. What I'm hearing is a disparity between what it appears to be the North versus the South, and I think that needs to be addressed. What I'm hearing, and if you listen to what we're hearing now, we may not want to admit it, but there seems to be, based on the communication that we're hearing, that there is not equal treatment as it relates to conducting elections across the board. I think there should be. I was there when we interviewed Mr. Scarpello. There were expectations that we asked for. There were changes that we asked for. Those are the things that we desperately wanted to have in place so that we could have a fair election across the board with 100% transparency. The where we sit today, I have not seen that. But we are going to work to make sure that that happens. That is what I'm determined to do. Those are expectations of this commission, and those are the things that we're going to address. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Scarpello. He has a presentation for everyone. I'm not quite sure. Thank you very much for that. Is there anyone online who has who wishes to speak? I guess not.
Kay Richardson.
Excuse me?
Kay Richardson.
Kay Richardson, you have 3 minutes.
Are we able to see their face? Because
If we're able to see them, we can. If not, they would have to have been here.
No.
And Bill Dudson.
If
Excuse
they
me?
just left written comments, then we can read those, but unless we're able to visually see them,
Yeah,
we legally can't hear from them.
that's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay, hold on a second. So
They have to be visible.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Richardson Jackson. Are you all able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Kimberly Richardson Jackson. I presently live at 4401 Bucknell Drive, Garland, Texas. I am an election judge. I've been an election judge since 2018, but I've been working for the Dallas County elections as a clerk since 2007. I have very varied experiences when it comes to the present Administrator, Mr. Scarpello. I appreciate Mr. Scarpello because there were some changes that were implemented that did help us new judges coming on the scene during the 2018-2019 elections. although we had never really had any serious issues as long as we were trained properly, which we were, trained thoroughly, which we were. Um, there's never been an issue as far as processes to make sure that voters were received properly. However, my discrepancy is mostly not necessarily with Mr. Scarpello, as it is with the Dallas County election staff. When we have questions, whether I'm a clerk or whether I'm an election judge, we've had different discrepancies of misinformation that's been provided to us when we do have valid questions. For example, when there is a joint primary election, we have to accept a co-judge, if you will. I've never had a co-judge except for one time, and that was in 2020 election. With that said, I've had to do both the training and the implementation and the setup and the hauling, as another of my colleagues has suggested. With that, I'm very, very concerned about when we call into the Dallas Elections Department or we write into the Dallas Elections Department, we get different answers depending on who answers the phone. This is particularly concerning about the pay that happens in May. I still have not received my pay for May 24th election. I received my May 7th election after June 7th. And that was based off of, and I called Mr. Scarpello, I think he remembers me calling him, out of my sheer frustration that it's been 30 days and we haven't gotten paid. At that point, there was an email submitted out to all of those who had email addresses tied to their accounts to choose whether they like to come to Roundtable at Dallas County Elections Department to pick up their check or to have it mailed. My stress is this: if we have a more secure, which I believe you all are trying to do, a secure, more efficient, quicker way to pay your election workers, regardless if their motivations or their purpose is to do it by making sure the fair election process is observed, or to make sure that every vote is counted, or to make just a little extra cash, it's got to have a seamless process. I appreciate the judge's binder book. It helps. It is a lot of check marks to check, but it does help keep us organized. And with that, I just wanted to say that even though Mr. Scarpello is new, I've never had an issue with him. My issue has been with the staff that I've gotten in contact. I've been yelled at over the phone. My workers have been placed that I've already hired have been placed at other locations when I've already communicated that these were my workers and they've been displaced to another location when I've already built my team for that particular election upcoming. So those are some issues that I have coming up, and that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yes, there's Phil Dunson.
Okay, we'll hear from, you said Phil Dunson?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dunson?
Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Phil Dunson, and I'm 628 Parkview Lane, Richardson, Texas. And I can just speak from being a new judge and a younger judge at that. I can't really speak from improvement from past years to the new year, and I'm so grateful for those who have, taken this 30 years or longer to really be in our election system and really serve us and serve the citizens. And I'm so grateful for that. But I do speak from the point of a new judge who came straight into a judge, not a clerk. And I think the system is just very exhaustive. There are a lot of things, and it's hard to be a new judge to learn it. And I think the flow chart really did help me in the midst of the election to be able to know where to go. And I'm grateful for that if that's something that Scarpello brought. I think it's more of a entire system needs a lot of fine tuning for the next generation, for the growth in making things efficient. And I just think just right now I hear the tension, I see that, and I think the system it has been something that's kind of been going for a long time, and it needs improvement. And with the midterms coming and so much tension in our country, I just think it's not a time for change, to really change as things are being, moved along forward with a person, especially with so many people that are most likely going to vote in November. I think it's a time to really hold together and try to be unified for the goal of securing elections, having trust within our people, and really moving forward that unity between our county, between our towns. I have 3 children, and we just had a little baby girl 2 weeks ago. And it is very hard for me to come and serve and volunteer. I'm not in it for the paycheck. I'm in it for securing a future for my children. And I think it's great what is going on. And I think we just need to continue to move forward one step at a time. And I'm grateful for Mr. Scarpello, and I'm grateful for everyone else. And I really have enjoyed serving as an election judge, and I'm excited for the future of our county. And I think we're making positive moves, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? We'll take 2 more if we have to.
There's a Vicky Little.
Ms. Little, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all hosting this meeting to talk about our elections, and I am appreciative that you all are trying to work together to make sure everybody has confidence that their vote, which is their voice, is being heard.
Ms. Little, can we get your name and address, please?
Oh, sure. It's Vicky Little, and I'm on 10839 Cinderella Lane, Dallas, Texas, 75229.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And so I've volunteered as a clerk before at our Redeemer. And so I've seen some of the behind the scenes where right across the street we have another voting center. So, I'm just excited that we're hopefully going to work together, kind of eliminate redundant voting centers so that we can shift people from the redundant ones and help make sure we've got coverage at all the centers. So, that's one of the things I'd like to suggest. And then one thing I wanted to comment on is I did a refresher course for training, and so that helped me feel more confident clerking. So, I love that refresher course was online, and I was able to do that prior to that. But I'm just hoping that we can limit the number of polling centers so that we can properly staff them and properly train them, and would love to hear as a community what we can do to help you all support it so that everyone gets their votes counted and their voices heard. And that's basically what I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we need to move on. We're over time. That's it. We have the presentation from Mr. Scarpello. If you can cut it down to 20 minutes.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming. Bigger crowd than I anticipated today. And I anticipated this was to be short, and I'll make it even shorter, try to get us all out of here. Let me just say that, I hear your feedback. I always hear your feedback. We take that feedback very seriously. No matter how it comes through, whether it's a complaint or whether it's election day or whatever it may be, we log everything and we look at that feedback and we make constant change. And of course, that constant change is one of the points of frustration for some, because, but I can tell you that constant change to improve elections is critical. Critical now more than ever. Right now, across the street in our second facility, we've got the Secretary of State's audit unit here auditing the 2020 presidential election. That there's a permanent audit division now with the Secretary of State that's going to audit every election. And something tells me that Dallas is going to be audited every time. That's just my interpretation. And if we do, and so that someone brought up, why are we changing? we need to change because we have to be bulletproof. We have to have processes that can stand up to an audit. And frankly, we should have processes that stand up to an audit. An audit, I'm not scared of an audit. And I shouldn't be scared of an audit because we're here to be fair and we're here to conduct elections in a very transparent way. And so that's the direction, that's my philosophy as far as this approach. And I just wanted to tell you the why. We didn't just come in here to make changes willy-nilly. We had nothing better to do. We have to make changes to be a more solid organization. Now, there was someone who mentioned Texas law and confusion at a polling place. I can tell you, Texas law is not great when it comes to conducting elections. And we're doing what we can to make it simpler and to lessen the burden on judges, to lessen, I've heard someone saying that the equipment they had to haul. Well, we've cut down the amount of equipment you have to haul, but you still have to haul too much. But we're doing a lot that we can to make things simpler and easier for people to be.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. Can you not address the comments, but actually do the presentation that you?
Sure, absolutely. So going into that, let me just go ahead and talk about what we've got put together. If you want to make that big. This is our org chart. I can tell you that you're not going to be able to see much from it. I think we've got some handouts for those who are interested. But right now we've got a total of 55 budgeted positions. And we've got 15 vacant. So like everyone else in the world, we are experiencing labor shortages here and with our temp workers and with our full workers. And so that there's a bit of frustration with that, but we're doing what we can. We're working, what this org chart shows, if he ever gets it up, is that we are working with HR and Commissioners Court to reclassify some of these positions, to make them more appealing so we can recruit some more folks. And so that's what that particular slide is. The next slide that you cannot see, but I can show you visually, this is a flow chart. This is a flow chart of the payroll process as it exists in Dallas County. And so people just say, just how hard can it be? You just pay people. Well, I can tell you, it's not easy. It's hard. And what we've done within my organization is we've tried to streamline that process. Instead of people literally standing there or sitting there with a calculator, keying numbers in, we have automated the process as much as we can here. But I can tell you that payroll is a multi-department function. Us, auditor's office, treasurer's office. I can tell you that all three of our offices have had challenges, and we have committed to work together to fix those challenges. Because there's nothing more important than the people who dedicated their day to getting paid. So that is definitely number one on my list. So that's what this next slide is about, but I will go ahead and breeze through that because we've got limited time. I can tell you, I mentioned the forensic audit. We've got the Secretary of State's office here. They've had phase 1 of that audit was completed in December. Phase 2, we've been working with them over the last couple of months. And right now we're at the on-site inspection stage. This is the second time they've been here. They've been very pleasant to work with. We've got a very cooperative working relationship, but they're digging deep. And frankly, they're digging deep to a lot of stuff that the staff here doesn't know about, because a lot of our staff, the staff that was here in 2020 is no longer here. And so what we've been trying to communicate to the Secretary of State's office is, we're not quite sure what happened in 2020, but we know what's happening now. And we know that what we're doing now is bullet. We're getting towards to that stage where we have that sort of confidence to make sure. I'll give you a very brief example. We used to have results of who came in the door to vote, and we used to have ballots. And we had reports from two systems, and we never cross-matched them. We never had spreadsheets to say, did we have the same number of people who asked for a ballot that actually got it and voted it? And it's that sort of simple transparency to show people like Wes Bowman that when he comes in and he's poll watching to say, we're golden. We look at our spreadsheets. We balance our books. And so we're heading towards that, and the Secretary of State's been very cooperative, understanding, if you will, looking forward. We're in the middle of 4 lawsuits. I can tell you, if we've ever, anybody, the attorney, has ever been involved in a lawsuit, it's incredibly time consuming. The discovery process in these lawsuits takes hundreds of hours. The depositions, I've been in 4 different depositions, day-long depositions, and the preparation and the, our attorneys have been very helpful, but it's incredibly time consuming. Public information requests asked. We've had hundreds and hundreds of these public information requests, which we're glad to give, but it all gets back to this happening because people do not trust the system. So that is why it gets back to this core reason why we're doing what we're doing, to rebuild our internal systems, to rebuild the trust for those who don't trust the system. In the meantime, and we've got some, we brought in some outside help to do that. Just update on the new language requirement, and for those who don't know, the end of 2021, December, there's a new language requirement that we now have to have not only English and Spanish, but English, Spanish, and Vietnamese for everything we do. All of our website, all of our publications, all of our, everything we do, we have to now translate it into Vietnamese. For those judges, I don't know how many had the chance to use it. We have a new translation application on our judges' phones, the new phones that we've got. And on those phones, you can actually press a button and get a translator in 40 different languages, including Vietnamese, for those who do not speak English. We'll take a moment to just say on that same phone, I've heard several people talk about the flowcharts. Well, the flowcharts, they're great, but they're a little confusing. And so what we built on that same phone is a phone application for processing provisional voters. That basically, you know how to read and say yes, no, or you know how to process a provisional voter. And I heard one gentleman say, that I can't remember who said it, that we don't need those flowcharts and those tools. We know what we're doing. Well, the facts don't back that up. In 2020, in processing provisional voters, we have 50% error rates. 50%. So we're building these tools and this infrastructure to help help judges not have these problems in processing. As far as the Vietnamese progress, I can tell you the Department of Justice is very strict. On day 1, they expect compliance, and we met with the Department of Justice. We told them what we've been doing for our Vietnamese compliance, and they're very happy with our progress. Update on our new warehouse training facility. We were in 3 different locations throughout the county. We had a lot of challenges with that, and a lot of old records, old records and equipment, supplies. And what we've done is we've cleaned all those warehouses up. We've got rid of, I think, 10, 30-yard dumpsters worth of stuff. And we've now consolidated those 3 warehouses into the single campus location. The Commissioners Court has been very generous in giving us probably one of the top 5 facilities in the country. And so you should be very grateful for that between this one and our new training and warehouse facility next door. And so that has allowed us to do a lot of the things, in particular, having the room to work to try to make our equipment preparations and our supply preparations that much more efficient and more accurate than they have been in the past. We hope to have an open house sometime later this summer with that new location. I'm a big part. Redistricting update. There was delayed census results because of COVID. Those delayed census results resulted in delayed redistricting plans by the state and by Commissioners Court, which then compressed our timelines to then re-precinct. The hardest part, frankly, is re-precincting. Drawing district lines for 5 district lines is one thing. When you have to redraw 800 precinct lines, that's much more difficult. And then you have to also not only redraw those lines, but then get that same information and put it into the voter registration system locally, and then in the voter registration system at the state level. That was a huge challenge in December, in January. That's the first time this office has ever done it. It was typically outsourced to an outside vendor. That vendor no longer exists, so we didn't take that on internally. So I'm very proud of the staff for doing such a great job. After that, we were only halfway done because now we've redistricted at the state level and we've redistricted at the county level and we've re-precincted. Now the city's way in. And the cities are re-precincting and we have to redo the whole thing all over again. And we had to do that in March and April in preparations for the main elections. And so I'm incredibly proud of our staff, our GIS staff, and our voter registration staff for getting that stuff done in a timely fashion. Huge project. Now going in, talking about the joint primary election, a lot of people said, why are we doing a joint primary election? I talked to the chairs of the party, and we found that there would be huge benefits. Benefits to voters, where there's uniform locations, where both parties, you don't go to one location for one party, another location for another party. You're going to one location and have to identify who you are by going to the Democratic line or the Republican line. Or having to tell someone to give me the Democratic ballot, or give me the Republican ballot. We decided this joint election, which would be much more beneficial to voters in particular. Really, it's a similar process to what people do all the time for every election. And there's also was benefits for the political party. I told you we had a hard time recruiting people. And that was paying people, because we did a joint election, we were able to pay people $16 an hour for clerks and $18 an hour for judges. Had we not had a joint election, we would have had to pay people, the state provided $12. Now imagine how many people would not have shown up if we were only paying $12 an hour. And so there was a huge benefit there. The vote center recruitment and management was done by the county instead of by the party. So a big benefit to the parties there. And it also gave us the opportunity to work together and to build this foundation to have a long-term relationship, a good working relationship between the parties. And I can't tell you how happy I am with that relationship that we have built, and which will be critical going into the November election, because we all know there's going to be drama in this November election. And the more we communicate, the more we work together, the less problems we're going to have. And so going into that election, there was also some other challenges because of the new laws. SB 1 was the biggest of the law, one of several laws though. And I can tell you when there's a new law passed, I'm going to speed up here because I think we're running out of time, but when there's a new law passed, the law itself is not what we go by. They're guidance documents provided by the Secretary of State. And those guidance documents came extremely late going into this election. We had up to 46 communications from the Secretary of State in the 80 days before the election, each one telling us how to run this election. And so every time we got communications, we had to modify. We had to modify. In fact, we got our last one the day before the election. And so that's a huge problem in the staff, our staff here, because we had done some things to be ready for that. By changing our infrastructure, we were able to absorb those changes and successfully conduct that election. But in particular, the one issue that about SB 1 was these mail ballot challenges. With new requirements for mail ballots, initially there was a big panic because there was about 40% rejection rate of those applications. Because Commissioner's Court helped kick in, I think, $184,000, where we did this educational effort and we reached out to people with mail ballots. We reduced those rates down to around 11%. And we've got a commitment from the court to continue that educational effort going into the November election. Having said all that, I talked about labor shortages. You know, when you say, until you quantify something, you don't really get it. Just looking at the screen, from just full-time vacancies from December through February, we lost 6,850 hours of labor. Because of ice storms, we lost 3 days of ice storms, we lost 1,500 hours of labor. Because temp labor shortages from unfilled positions where the temp agencies can't find people to fill our positions, we lost 2,670 hours of labor. Temp labor lost from ice storms, 870 hours of labor. So a total deficit of 11,890 hours. And so what we had to do is sometimes take shortcuts, sometimes have our staff working, we're working 80 hours a week going into that primary election. And so, you know, a tremendous thanks to our staff for working so hard to try to overcome these deficits. Now, with all that said, the primary election was not where we need to be. We had a really good, well-run November election. And going into the primary, because of all the things we talked about, shortening of labor, new laws, blah, blah, blah. When we evaluate these elections, the March primary election, we had some issues. In particular, mail ballot issues that I talked about because of SB 1. Personnel, various issues because of the shortages I just outlined. Facilities, not having the people to load the boxes, not having the people to prepare the machines, not having the room because our 2 facilities weren't available yet. We were operating out of this compact location here. Not having the room to stretch out and do things in the most proper way. And so the March election was a little rough. The May 7th election, we had a little bit more time to absorb those SB 1 changes, et cetera, et cetera. Things got better. The May 24th election, pretty darn smooth. We had basically no issues. And the same with the June 18th election. Except for the one that's got everyone all excited, and that is the fact that we've got this mayor election that you've heard that we're going to try to address. So I think this is just a summary of what we talked about. Some things I've already talked about. And going forward, so now what are we doing? There's a document that I have that we discussed, and then this is a way to kind of quantify for people what we're doing here. This is the document, what we call our tactical plan. And it's a tactical plan not to conduct elections, but it's a tactical plan on what are we doing to fix elections? Department by department, what is each group doing, or what has every group done to rebuild this infrastructure? And what are we going to do in the future? And the focus of that right now is, well, what are our summer projects? What do we need to do, listening to folks, giving their feedback, and knowing our own issues? What do we need to do to do the next fixes? Because I can tell you, our fix list is about this long. And we can't fix everything all at once. We've fixed about, now we're down to this. Before November, we're gonna get down to this, and so, but we have to prioritize. So that's what we're doing now. We're gonna continue to use the feedback from this group, we use the feedback from the Citizen Election Advisory Committee. This is the feedback that we get from everyone else. And we're going to go into the summer with our major fixes. And I can tell you that right now, where that stands is that our voting sites department, they basically manage people and places. And as we've gone around and fixed Central Pound and we've fixed the warehouse situation and we've fixed the way we program machines, et cetera, the big fix that we need to make now is the way we acquire and assign poll workers. Now, these folks and their staffs, they do a great job of recruiting people, but we have no infrastructure in place to communicate with those folks. Because we've got Republicans talking to people, we got the Democrats talking to people, we got commissioner court members and staffs talking to people, and the poll workers are like, who do I listen to? Who do I talk to? And when we got a Democratic Party says, here's the list of poll workers we want, they hit send us a spreadsheet. The minute they hit send, that spreadsheet's obsolete because they're taking another phone call and they don't have, someone else's, there's been a replacement. So there's this domino effect of confusion between who's working where. And we never used to have that issue years ago when a judge had a stable workforce and a judge showed up every time. But that's not the case anymore. This is the way society is now. You've heard of, I'm sure you've all heard about bowling leagues, how bowling leagues have died because there's this lack of community where people don't do things. It's the same with poll workers. Poll workers, we had for the March and May elections, we had poll workers the day before the election, or the day before picking up their supplies, saying, I will work. I'm confirming I'm going to be there to work. The day of pickup for the May 7th election, we had 80 no-shows. 80. March. I think it was, I think 71 in March and 80 in. Right. It's a lot. It's good. And so we've got to be, and part of that's our fault because of the miscommunication or in this lack of infrastructure. So our summer project is to rebuild the roles and processes, who's doing what, get everybody on the same page, having us use the same software where we're all looking at the same document all at the same time. We're not sending obsolete spreadsheets, et cetera. And we're rebuilding that process and we're rebuilding that software. And it's a big project, but we're going to do that internally because you can't just buy the stuff off the shelf. These vendors, we're using software now that's used on a national level, and it's not customized for Texas, it's not customized for Dallas. It doesn't work. So that's what that's our next big fix. And so we hope to see for the November election, a very smooth process and in fact, probably a reappointment of judges because we've traditionally done this 2-year appointment process. Well, people die, people move away, et cetera. We're going to do a 1-year process. We're going to re-nominate judges on a yearly basis, which we can by the month.
Last 2 minutes.
Other big I'm just about that. We're going to do our warehouse reorganization. We temporarily moved into our warehouses, threw everything up on the shelves, and got working to conduct these elections. We moved in late March and we had a May election. We're going to reorganize, get rid of more stuff, finalize our move into the warehouse. We're moving our training team. In fact, they were moving yesterday from this location across the street. We got a brand new training facility, similar to this, but bigger and even better, with breakout rooms, all video training. Even it's going to be even better than it's been in the past. Even though this last year we thought we were very happy with this. The communications team is we're going to be putting together a way to combat misinformation and disinformation. This is the tool of people who want to create disruption in the elections, but I can tell you that it's from both sides. It's not just Republicans, it's just Democrats, it's both. And so we're going to have something on our website where when we hear all these rumors, you hear them all the time, what's going on with it? Point to that website, say, there's the truth. And so that is critical from a communication standpoint, to be able to knock down all this crazy that's taking place on a national level and at a local level. And then voter registration program. We're going to have a very aggressive voter registration program this summer that we're going to implement with the blessing of Commissioner's Court once we get it. But that is one of our jobs, is to expand voter registration. And so we're going to be doing that this summer. So those are kind of our big things for this summer, in addition to continuing to tweak this and to continue to rebuild our internal process. So that's all I have for today, but certainly if you can answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I don't have any questions, Mr. Ames.
No.
If you,
Just going to say one thing around, from the Democratic Party side, there are two major issues that I see going forward that hopefully can be addressed by the things that have been discussed today. First, obviously, the pay issue. It's imperative that we get that right. It's imperative that we have good communication prior to the election, so the judges and clerks understand what's coming and the RFP coming out. As a two-pronged approach, I think that is the best way that we can move forward for the November election. The second, as Mr. Warren mentioned, the judges and poll workers are the basis of any election. And we understand as a commission that there has been frustration and communication issues on staffing needs, on equipment needs, on other areas as well. The hope for me is that the application that Mr. Scarpello just talked about will help alleviate some of that communication issue. It must for the November election, so that the communication to the judges and from the judges to the clerks about their voting location and about the issues that you're having can be eliminated and addressed quickly through the parties and to the election administration. The last thing I want to mention is something that Mr. Warren also talked about the appearance of the comments being a north-south issue. From the history of Dallas County, there has been that in many, many aspects. And from the Democratic Party perspective, we will continue to work to make sure that that is not an issue in elections. And that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
thank you, Ms. Noble. Ms. Howdy?
From the Republican Party perspective, we share that same philosophy. We want to make sure there are no issues anywhere in Dallas County, anywhere. And we will work as hard as we can to ensure that. We are very pleased with the progress we're making in the processes of the election. I think we all want transparent and fair elections, and that's what we're working for. And it's a lot, especially for those of you who work. You know what goes into this. There are a lot of moving parts to it. So it takes a while. There's some growing things along the way. But I will say this, I've been very pleased with the ability to work not only with the elections administrator and department, but also with the Democrat Party. And I think that, that's what we all need to do. We need to be able to work well with each other. Just like Mr. Bowen said, we're not always going to be happy that our party didn't win this race or our party didn't win that race, but that's not personal. And we should all work to get along together and try to make this as smooth a process as possible. We are the 7th largest county in the country, and we have 460 polling voting centers. It's a lot. So I appreciate everything that all of you who go out there and work in the community and work in these polling places do. And we appreciate you, and we are listening to what you tell us.
Thank you, Ms. Howdy. I think with that, No more questions, no more comments. All right, it is 12:12. If there's nothing else from the commission members, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion
Is
to
there a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn? All right, all in favor? Pass.
Great.